Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. This is Anthem Community Church's weekly roundtable. I'm here with Pastor Marty and Pastor Omar. My name's Josh. Thanks for joining us. We're excited to have you here. I do have the feed here, so I can see if you guys have any questions or anything like that, but we wanted to just open up the floor today and talk about a few of the current events that are happening as we, in our world today, the things that are shaping us today, and the things that are, maybe kind of strangling our faith a little bit, or making us question how we are to live or how we are to feel as Christians in this world. We know that the Christian life is not supposed to be easy. Nothing in the Bible talks about it being a cakewalk or anything like that. But the question then becomes, how do we stay strong in our faith, and what do we do when things don't necessarily float in the direction that we believe? And one of the biggest items of discussion today is this lady in Kentucky who basically was sent to jail. Judge ordered her to go to jail for refusing to issue a marriage license for gay couples because of her personal convictions and personal beliefs. And the interesting thing there is that there's a twofold situation here where we've got a person who works for the government who is supposed to be doing the government's work. The government, in essence, has said this is okay, that we have allowed this in this state, and so therefore you need to do that. Now, how do we as believers respond if we are the person if we're that lady, if we're in her shoes?
Yeah, it's very multifaceted. What's difficult about this whole situation is that this ruling is so new. And because the ruling is so new, the government is saying same-sex marriage is legal. And because it's legal, this is what you have to do. And so if you can imagine, you've got this government worker who's a Christian, and she is being told that this is what she has to do now.
Right.
And I don't know the background for her and her story. I don't know how long she's been working for this agency, but that must be a tough thing.
Sure.
It must be a tough thing to be going through because she, let's say she's worked for them for 10 years. I don't know.
Right.
And now she's being told she has to do this. Well,
that's interesting because you look and you say, well, does that mean as a Christian I'm supposed to quit my job because of what I believe? Or, that's your livelihood. You're bringing home the paycheck to pay the mortgage, to pay the car payment, the kids going to school and things like that. Do you just automatically say, well, I guess because of my beliefs, I need to quit my job and leave? Or, Marty, in discussing this earlier, you had brought up a good point that was there somebody else there that was able to issue that?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we've got to look at here as we talk about this whole deal it's kind of hard to do with all these different angles and devices. And
no
stuff.
doubt.
I don't know where I'm supposed to look, so I'll just look down here and talk.
That's fine.
When I'm a Christian, and how am I supposed to live? I'm supposed to live out my faith on a daily basis. Right. This whole same-sex thing has just kind of gotten, it's blown up and it's popular, and it involves sex and relationships and love and all that. So there's a lot of people going to be all over that. When I hear this story about this lady in Kentucky who works for the government, she has a job to do of issuing legal documents, and then she decides that she's not going to issue these legal documents because it goes against her beliefs about this same-sex thing. My guess is that she is issuing all kinds of legal documents and doing all kinds of things in her job that go against the teachings in Scripture. And even if you just want to keep it in the area of marriage, the same Bible that she's saying that she's quoting, that she loves and that she's trying to live by, says that two people who don't have the same faith shouldn't get married. So is she checking that? And if a Christian is trying to marry, is coming up to get a license and they're going to marry a non-Christian, is she not going to issue that?
Right.
Because the Bible says you're not supposed to do that either. And that's the flaw. That to me, one of the hardest things to do in the Christian life is to be consistent. And I remember when I took ethics, I do it like that. Here, Omar, can you hold that?
Sure, I can hold that.
When I took ethics, one of the big things was how consistent am I going to be?
Right.
And one of the things that really gets Christians in trouble with other people who aren't Christians is that we're just so incredibly inconsistent. And to me, this is a great example of it. And that's why it's so easy to call Christians hypocritical.
Sure.
And because it's like, okay, well, you're not going to follow the Scripture in this area, but you're going to follow the Scripture in this area.
Right.
And you're going to do it at the expense of breaking the law.
And that's a good point. And I hear what you're saying, but was she conscious of that? And that's a question that brings some interest, because if she's not conscious of that, is she held? I mean, you're right. Is she supposed to be? Because she's not really paying attention to whether she's issuing a Muslim, marriage certificates or whatever. But this issue right now with the same-sex marriage is very forefront, and is one of those things that
well, sure, it's pretty easy to
about.
tell that two people are
Yes,
the same
yeah.
sex. I get that, but I don't think that's an excuse. I don't think ignorance is. I don't think ignorance is an excuse, and that's the other thing. If you're going to make a bold stand on something, you better have done your homework, and you need to know exactly what is at stake here. You need to know exactly what you're doing, and for somebody to say, you know what, I'm going to consciously break the law because of my religious beliefs. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. But when you have a government job and you've signed up for that, now, to me, the thing that she should have done was when this hit and the Supreme Court made this the law, and it was like, you've got to do this, and you're in a job that requires you to do something that goes against your faith, then what you do as a Christian is you quit that job. You walk away from that job.
And you're talking from a moral standpoint, like if you're told to lie, if you're told to cheat in business, if you're being told these are the things that you're going to do.
Yeah, then you quit that job.
Right.
You don't keep that job.
Right.
And that to me, that would have been much more honorable. I don't know if there's questions coming in or whatever.
No.
But okay.
We're good.
That's the honorable thing to do. It's
Sure.
like, I cannot do this anymore based on my belief. So I'm not going to keep this job.
Right.
I'm going to keep the $80,000 paycheck. By the way, a pretty cushy government job in whatever county, Kentucky,
Sure.
making $80,000 handing out marriage license. But and that would be a hard walk away from. But
right.
That is the thing. To be consistent with my faith and to be consistent in my Christianity. That's what I would have done. And the other thing, another example is, and the thing that bothers me when I see this news thing and these people out there picketing and they're doing all of this stuff and they've got both sides have their ridiculously silly signs and stuff that they haven't thought through on either side and what they're saying. And a Christian, it's very easy for a Christian to jump on and say, we need to pray for this lady. We need to support her. She's done the right thing. I don't know if she's done the right thing. To me, like I'm saying, the right thing would have been, hey, I can no longer keep this job because now you're asking me to do something that goes against my beliefs.
Sure.
And I think that should be across the board in any situation.
A question came in through Periscope from one of our listeners that, a Christian teacher teaching evolution. Teaching things that she or he doesn't necessarily believe in. Is that on the same lines as what we're talking about here?
Well, I mean, to me, if you're teaching in a public school, that to me that's not a complicated one to get over. You teach it as theory. You say this is something that some people believe. This is a theory of how this happened, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to believe it. And this is what the theory teaches. So I'm teaching the theory. Doesn't mean that you have to necessarily believe in that.
Yeah, you don't have to tell them this is what I believe, right? You can say this is an idea, and we're going to learn about it.
And here's the other thing,
it goes along the lines of like apologetics. I mean, I wouldn't myself. I want to study Catholicism. I want to study Mormonism. I want to study Buddhism, things like that, just to know how do I defend my faith, against those things.
Yes.
And come on in, John. We want you in here, buddy.
Now the question too, can you be in a job where you may not agree with what you're doing and still do it?
Can you be in a job and well, of course. I think everybody has those situations. But then you have to decide: is this job requiring me to do something that is immoral? And have I just and what am I basing that morality on? Is that morality is that on a legal issue, or is that coming from my religious beliefs? What would we be saying today as a fundamental Christian in the United States if there was a Muslim clerk working for the United States government in whatever county, Kentucky, and they were refusing to hand out marriage license to Christian couples? And their argument was you can't get this license here, and their argument was because this goes against my religious beliefs.
If they were a publicly elected official, then the Muslim question would be very, very interesting to answer, because there seems to be two scales of religious freedom allowances going on in the country right now. If you're anything other than a Christian, you're afforded the freedom of your beliefs, and you're kind of left alone. As a publicly elected official, that is one of the interesting aspects of this. But the reason why I think that this is interesting is because when you get the Supreme Court decision that sets the First Amendment in direct opposition to the 14th Amendment, you have to have case law that's going to establish the finer minutia of how these things are litigated and legislated. So we are in complete open country where nobody knows what the right thing is, and nobody knows even what the legal thing is. Now, to have her imprisoned for contempt,
that's what I was just about to say,
is a big, big, bold move.
That's a bold move for her, because, okay, she stands up for what she believes in, fine. But then, on top of that, now you're saying she's got to go to jail?
Well, no, she's in jail. So
well, yeah, she's in
what
jail.
You have now is you're going to have her legal, the ramifications of her contempt of court is going to be part of the building piles and piles of litigation that's going to have to go through so that we sort this out. Like, how do we both protect freedom and prevent illegal discrimination? And what does that mean? Is Thomas Jefferson right? Do we have a separation of church from state where I have the ability to express my convictions in my can I do that?
I understand. Yeah,
or are we establishing a national religion whereby if you do not acquiesce to these philosophical beliefs, this ideology, if you are opposed to the national ideology, then you are subject to imprisonment and to excommunication from the public sphere. I'm like,
no, there are scary parts to this.
It's incredibly scary parts.
There are very scary parts, but we've also talked about this before in that. Okay, so you look at the public school system, and you look at the things that are being taught in the school system, and for us as Christians, I would rather have a curriculum that was not teaching, evolution and those type of things, and keep things neutral, so that when it comes to teaching our kids certain values, that comes from the home, not from their school environment or from the car. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh, totally. But I think, unfortunately, we are just not in that world anymore. What we see today is, and I'm not a parent. I cannot speak as a parent. But what we see in our world today, in our society, is we send our kids to school to be raised. We're busy with our careers. We're busy with other things that take time, whether it's sports or baseball or this or that or whatever it might be. But we're not as invested anymore in our children.
Well, here's the question. There was a thing that just came in about what they're teaching in schools. That I think ultimately, when we look at as Christians, if we believe in truth, if we truly believe in the separation of church and state, then we have to make a decision. Am I going to allow my children to go into a public system, and they're going to be taught what they're going to be taught, and then I'm going to counter that what I teach them in church, what I'm going to teach them at home, or am I going to pull them out of that environment and do the homeschooling myself, or am I going to change my lifestyle, live in a 1,000 square foot house instead of a 2,800 square foot house because I'm going to send my children to Christian private school?
Sure.
I mean, those are the decisions I have to make. My argument, the thing that I want to make sure that we're not doing as Christians, is that we're not holding people to a standard to make sure that we're not holding people to a different standard that we're not willing to hold ourselves.
Sure.
And if I have a job, and I have a job to do, and I'm working for the government, to be able to say I'm not going to do this, and it's directly impacting as citizens of the United States. I'm not going to do this because this goes against my religious belief. And I have the full right to do that. And we want to say that that is okay across the board.
But that's the hard part.
That's
Across
not
the board, it does. Yeah, I mean that's
the crux of the whole situation. Well, then how do you deal with conscientious objectors from being drafted into government service? At some point we have to decide as a nation, what are we going to stand for? And if we're going to stand for is you don't get to say no to what the government is projecting as the morality baseline. You don't get to disagree with that, and we're saying that if you do disagree with that, you're excommunicated from the public sphere, from public office, from public anything. Then we're creating a national
neutrality.
Should Coca-Cola hire people who are against sugared water?
They have the right to hire that person or not.
I know, but
and
they're
Kentucky
not.
gets the right to elect the county clerk that they want.
That's true.
Wow, man.
I understand.
This is an elected official. The people have made a selection for who they want to be taking care of the administration.
And she has the right. You're arguing that she has the right to fulfill that job based on her religious beliefs.
I'm going to go in there. Let's jump in that pool. Let's see how that ends up.
Oh no, my question was, you're okay with an elected official, and she's going to be elected into that position, and you want her to be able to carry out her job based on her religious beliefs.
And we've talked about this in a couple different ways. And you're calling for a society that is free from partiality towards any one particular belief system or religious system, because you don't want Sharia law or Muslim or any of this other thing. Okay, now they are not mutually exclusive. Now this is interesting because you get on the foundational aspects and you go into cultural preference. Is it acceptable for me as an American citizen to say I have a cultural preference for the manifestations of a Christian society versus the manifestations of a Muslim society? What I mean by that is, do I want to live in a place where people follow the Bible or the Quran? Do I get a choice? And do I want to exercise a preference as I elect people who make our laws? The answer is yes. I want to have a preference for the culture that we're developing. And when I voice my opinion, I want to have a preference. Do I think Michigan should go in and have a constitutional amendment that precludes any kind of international or Sharia law being integrated into their legal system? Yeah, I think that's extremely important. I think they need to do that now. Are there other states that have gone through that process? Yes, because it's important to prefer.
Do you think Michigan should be able to go under and say that we don't want any Christian beliefs instituted into the law
through the legislature? Absolutely. If they're going to
absolutely
vote,
what?
Absolutely, they should.
They should what?
The state should be able to determine the culture that they want to manifest.
Well, okay.
This is a states' rights thing.
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying,
Civil
John.
War stuff.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. In that, what we're trying to do is we're trying to push for a place, and you should be able to elect an official that is pushing your interests and what you believe. I hear you. I hear you on that.
Or move to a state that has laws that you agree with.
So I hear what you're saying, and as I look at that, and because we live in a country that really, I mean, we push this whole freedom thing. We push this life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And because we're such a melting pot, I mean, we have cultures upon cultures upon cultures living in the United States. And what's made us the United States is that we are that melting pot.
Well, I would argue that you do have to ask why do people want to live here compared to where they came from?
Yes.
Because yes, we are a melting pot. That's a very but right, and they want typically people want to come here because of the greatness of what America is.
And that's why everyone
when
came
you
here.
Live like
you had the Puritans come here. You had
the American dream
because they had that freedom. And so for me, I will argue towards the freedom of, okay, yes, and that's where it's hard because you want people to express the freedom of their beliefs, but yet we want separation of church and state.
We do.
And so there's
we don't want any state-imposed religion.
So there's
you don't want state-imposed religion, but you want state-imposed laws that reflect your religion.
Absolutely.
Well, hold on.
But that's
I would argue that you say you want.
There's a difference between
you want your
the
cake
laws.
and eat it too, as you say.
There's a difference between laws and judicial edict. There's a difference between an interpretation of the 14th Amendment And
You want that as long as as long as your belief system wins. You don't want that if your belief system is losing.
That's not my supposition. If the system is going to function as it's designed, the culture, the people who make up the culture, should be determining how that culture is acting, right? And we should be able to not have a tyrannical edict type of 4 to 5 vote in a body of unelected officials.
Now, with what you're
gets
saying,
broadly vague.
With what you're saying, though, because what's going to be difficult, and what's difficult about that is that if you have, like, for example, then obviously there's going to be homosexuals that are going to elect homosexuals into certain offices, and there's going to be Muslims who are going to say, you know what, we want to elect. And so you have all these different types of...
It's called like a parliamentary type of system, or a plurality of in a two-party system.
Yeah,
it happens all over the place.
And so what happens when you start doing that, and obviously what you want to do, and that's why we have Congress, and because these people and these different congressmen and senators are in there to help say, okay, this is what we need in Nevada, here's what we need in Nebraska, whatever it is. They're pushing for and representing the people in their jurisdictions.
It's called the Republic.
Okay, and so, but the question is it better to have a system that is neutral when it comes to...
It's a fallacy. It's impossible. You cannot be neutral.
But why can't you be
Because
neutral?
laws say no to something, always.
Because
a
if you're not
culture is
neutral-
defined by what it says no to. And if you're saying no to, you cannot say no to saying no. You're saying no, okay? I cannot say no to me being obedient to what I think my God wants me to do. And I'm thinking that I'm going to have eternal, hypocritical reactions and by doing my job in the way that you're telling me to do. You know, you're saying that I have to acquiesce to and I have to stamp and say that I'm the county clerk on the seat of this particular authority in this country or in this county, and I have to go against my conscience to stamp this piece of paper to say this, and then forever I'm going to know that I was I'm Judas at some point. I'm going against my beliefs. I'm saying maybe it's not even the point of that particular belief.
Yeah, because what happens if that elected official changes their mind? This would never happen. I mean, a politician would never run on one platform and then get elected and not actually do what they ran for, right? That would never happen, right? Of course, that happens all the time.
Really?
But what if she changed her mind? What if she changed her mind, or whatever the situation is? Or what if you elect someone or somebody to become in and they're going to say, and they're a Christian, and then they convert to some other crazy religion, and now this crazy religion is going to take away a right for you and your family.
Yeah, and I'm suggesting that that's already happened.
Of course it's happened.
Yeah.
So should we be picketing and supporting that that's the way that we want it?
Yeah. See,
you lost me, man.
Okay, because
are we moving? It is government. The question really is government moving towards a better and healthier government? That's the question right now. Or are we moving towards a government that, wow, okay, this is not the way that the founding fathers intended it, and we are moving in a terrible direction? And that's first of all, that's what we have to ask.
Depends on how you define healthy, because my view might be different than somebody else's.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
and that's the whole point.
And that's it.
The whole, who gets to determine?
That's exactly right.
Who gets to define the words?
And
That's right.
healthy is
Yeah,
going to
that's
be
right.
defined by fiat, if healthy is going to be defined by unelected representatives and a narrow majority, that's going to affect the way that it goes all the way across the board to how now my children are going to be raised and the culture they're going to be indoctrinated with in a government school, all the way from pre-K. And then we're going to have all this.
So part of all of your argument is, unless people stand up and do what this lady's doing, then there's not. If everybody just rolls over, then it just gets thrown. But if we have people
the battlefield, then it doesn't stay neutral. These are not neutral arguments.
No.
If we're not fighting for influencing the discussion and trying to shape the culture, and we just retreat and say, okay, well, the Supreme Court said.
So the fight.
Then who comes in and takes the battlefield?
The fight is this the correct way to define marriage? The fight is not, does this employee have the right to not do things her job requires her to do based on her religion?
She's taking an emotional, spiritual stance against the law, in my opinion, and
It is,
obviously
yeah,
the court's
absolutely.
opinion,
Yeah.
in order to do the same thing that the civil disobedience movement did in the 60s. They were breaking laws in order to make a point, in order to draw attention to, and to get into the courtroom to have this worked out. Because this is going to be the first of many. You got your bakeries, you got your wedding chapels. All this is building case law that is allowing us to navigate the contradiction that we have between freedom of expression and the freedom of expression of worship, and the freedom of equal protection.
Okay, well,
under
so
due process.
and that brings up a point. And going back to education, okay, my wife is a teacher, and so if the government decides that, which they've decided, they have said that same-sex marriage is legal now. Okay, now they want to do education, and we're going to educate
Because
people.
they've nationalized education.
Okay, because they've nationalized it, and now they're saying, okay, we want to teach that same-sex marriage is
Equal.
Okay, in a public school setting.
So now you're not only just allowing somebody to participate in an institution, but now you are normalizing that, in my opinion, very objectionable behavior based upon my understanding of the Scripture. You're normalizing that into my 4-, 5-, and 6-year-olds. You know, we don't have to have a deep argument on whether or not you control future culture by controlling the education system.
No,
this is not an argument.
That is not an argument. That is not an
Okay, so
argument.
what I'm saying is that if we don't say something and say, you know what, you're going to we lost the Supreme Court, but now we're just going to roll over and we're going to let you take through curriculum on a national. I didn't vote for nationalized curriculum, for crying out loud. You know, that's like, education is supposed to be a state and local issue. So we have multiple fronts that we have to come and try and push back
and
on.
I hear and that's why I brought that up.
Because I want to shape the
here's
culture
my
the way
question.
I want to shape it.
Now here's my question: would it be better? Because I will fight against that. If they came to me and they said, "Now I don't have a problem. I honestly don't. Okay, same-sex marriage. People want to get married legally in the eyes of the courts in Nevada. Fine, do what you want. You want the tax benefits? Fine. Now, when it comes to you want to get married in the eyes of God, that's a completely different conversation that has to be had with those particular individuals. Because that, like you said earlier, that's an ethics. That's an ethics.
It's the ethics. Then you're saying that nobody that is involved in that,
Now-
throughout all of the public employees and all of the bureaucracy that
but
goes
when
in that,
you work for the government,
you're saying you cannot have an opinion.
in a sense, because
The government is not
Because we-
supposed to prevent the exercise of your worship.
Now, going back to the whole education thing, if the CCSD here in Nevada decides that they're going to teach sex equality in public schools, that is something that I will fight against.
Well, you better get your pencil sharp.
I know,
'cause
and
it's right
and that
now.
is something that I will fight against because of the fact that is, I will
What?
push. I will push for.
What is it?
I will push for neutrality more than I will push for.
How do you
anything
define
else.
neutrality? What's
Neutrality,
neutrality
in
is
that
equality.
Don't teach
Don't teach anything
Don't
about
teach-
marriage.
don't
Don't teach
teach-
anything about family. Don't teach anything about.
because that's the job of the home to do that, not.
Okay,
our
so how are you
schools.
going to teach your kid to read then? You can't have, like, you know, what are you going to, what's going to be in the books? What's going to be in the stories? Do you get to read To Kill a Mockingbird, or
And
do you get to read
Eddie
Dostoevsky?
Riddler says there is no neutral.
There is no neutral. You're always biased. The curriculum that is being presented.
So how
is
can there
always
not be
being
neutral?
biased.
No, he's bringing up a great point. Okay, so
Somebody's-
neutral. So if you've got your first grader, and where I grew up with the typical husband, wife, 2 kids at the table. Now you can have a book with 2 men at the table with a kid, or 2 women at the table with a kid, or two
And that's
two
another
people at
piece
the
of case law
table
that's
who
gonna have to
don't
be
know
worked
what
out.
they are, and they're just calling themselves Zen or whatever they are at the University of Tennessee, and that's what the story is, and that's what's being used. I mean, and so that's, from a standpoint of education and people who've been a part of Christian education for a long time, and when they pull down and say we're going to start this Christian school, we're going to use the Bible to teach literature. We're going to use the Bible to teach reading.
Of
We're going to
course.
use the Bible, and that's
No,
what we're
of
doing.
course. And
So
yes.
what if
What I'm trying to
there
say
is
when
no?
it comes to government, there needs to be neutrality, and obviously.
But I don't think
It's
that
not
exists.
possible to have a neutral government, because if you say everything is tolerated,
There is no government.
There's nothing.
There are no rules.
That's
you
a
have
lie.
To say, like when John said, you have to say no to something.
You say no to something. And right now, the Christian worldview is being said no to because we are saying no to certain behaviors because we have like tight kind of moral restrictions on our behavior.
As we've talked through this, when I think about this lady, okay, this is what she's done. She stood up for her thing. So as she stood up for this, to support her in standing up for this and her decision to take this to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. Because somebody had to go through all of this stuff to get to the Supreme Court for us to even get the same-sex thing to happen. So somebody's going to have to step up and say, this is my right, this is my constitutional right to be able to do that. And that's the way that we need to support her. For me as a Christian to say she shouldn't lose her job, or whatever, I can say that, but I've got to understand that where we're at right now, that we've got to go through a process. And we've got to, when you say we need to see the battlefield, okay, what is it that we're fighting for here? And most of the time, for most of us, we don't know what we're fighting for. And we don't have a clear enemy. I mean, that is one of the things that, from a Christian standpoint, the primary thing that Satan does to us is to make us not believe that he exists. Because if he doesn't exist, then I don't fight him.
Sleep, child.
Yes. And so when we don't know what the battle is, that's an interesting. And for Christians, as it relates to this situation in the United States, we're really seeing one of the few times in the history of our country where Christians are being pushed to stand for their rights. Because in past generations, because it was the law of the land, or it was the majority, you really didn't really have to fight for those things.
There's a reason that we have Thomas Jefferson commenting on these things, because there was all kinds of religious persecution going on in the colonies. There's tons of interdenominational. The Baptists were a persecuted group.
Yeah.
Our saying that, hey, you need to get dunked as an adult even if you were sprinkled as a child, that was literally a jailable offense where you could have been publicly castigated and abused. Okay, so there's a reason for this, because there is no vacuum. There's no neutral. So we always have to be saying, you know what we want is we want the love of a neighbor. And what we're saying is that the most loving thing that we can do for our neighbors is to preserve the family.
Sound like a Democrat right there.
We want to love our neighbors.
I'm just saying, because I mean, when
I want to love my homosexual friends, I want to be able to have the freedom of letting them know that the lifestyle that they're engaging in is unhealthy for them. It is not a positive thing.
So we have River. She should have resigned instead of the approach she took, and that's what you were saying.
Well, recently she should have resigned instead of the approach she took. I initially going in and see it. That would be my thought. Hey, I got to resign from this position because you're now asking me to do something, and then maybe resign and then take it to court to say, okay, I had to resign because my rights, and then go that way. She's going the way to where she's arrested and going to jail, and that's another way to do it. The thing that one of those verses, one of those things that Jesus said was that because we're being sent out to wolves, and we are being sent out to wolves. If you're a Christian, you are living among wolves, and because we're among wolves, we need to be as shrewd as serpents, as gentle as doves, and I think where we've got to get better as Christians, we've got to get better at both of those things, because we're not very gentle, and we come across very crass, and we come across saying it's my way or no way, and that may be what is at the heart, but that's not a really good way of winning an argument.
Yeah, but we're not engaged in conversations here. We're not engaged in
arguments. I understand, but
the arguments have been taken out of the theoretical and to put into practice, and now we have the arm of the government coming in and putting little nice ladies in jail because she refuses to engage in activity that goes directly against her religious belief, or Christian religious beliefs.
And also is now, which means to live out her Christian faith puts her in direct opposition to the laws of the land.
We have tons of examples of that. You don't bow down to that idol?
I know we have tons of examples throughout history.
But we also don't work. We don't
But
live in an empire.
In the last 40 or 50 years,
she's an elected official.
The last 40 or 50 or 60 years, we don't have a lot of those examples in the world that we know, in the United States that we know.
So you're saying it's kind of a new thing?
It's not a new thing because it's been going on for generations. But here and in our world, it's a new thing.
And this is our time. This is our generation's time to say, hey, are we going to put up with this, or are we going to say, you know what, we have a right to exist. We have a right to participate as full members of this society, and we have a right to full exercise of our deeply held religious beliefs. And we need to fight for that with litigation. And we need to fight with that.
And obviously, this is incredibly sticky. Incredibly sticky because she is saying my religious beliefs are directly impacting how you live your life, and that seems a wee bit anti-American. I know it may not be, but on the surface, it seems like that. For me to say, okay, is
there somebody else in the office that could have done that?
Yeah, that was my first question.
Can somebody else put a stamp on this paper so she doesn't have to participate? That
was my first question. Is there somebody else who doesn't have?
Or is she being forced to acquiesce as a point, as they're making a point? And that they cornered her.
But that goes back to that whole idea of is there a middle ground in this whole situation? And that's what I'm talking about with the whole. Maybe when I say neutral, I mean middle. What I'm trying to say is middle ground. How can we find a middle ground? Because obviously we can't just, as Christians, say that homosexuals should not have these rights, and then they can't say to us, well, you're persecuting us and you can't stand up for your beliefs. Okay? And so there's a tension there. So how do we come in and find the middle ground on that? And I like what you're saying. Maybe she shouldn't have been thrown in jail. I just don't believe that.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that.
If you don't listen to a judge, the judge can put you in jail.
Well, that's true too. That's true.
Yeah, of course. But what I'm saying,
I'll fight for that right too. If you go to contempt, you need to go to jail.
But Marty's saying
that's the law. That's good.
Is there someone else?
Is there somebody else that could have done this? Is there somebody else that in other words, that I don't have to go against my beliefs?
I want to bring up an interesting point that we haven't touched on yet. I was not given any additional hours at a local chapel here in Las Vegas that I was working at because I refused to do a same-sex wedding during my shift. There was somebody else in the building that could take care of it. I was no longer given any opportunity to work there. I left. I didn't fight it. I said, when having a discussion with one of the owners, it was... I believe you have a right as an owner of a private establishment to determine who you have working for you. But I also have a right as an individual to not be coerced or forced into participating into an activity that I think runs me contrary or against my God. All right? She's a publicly elected official. Now, publicly elected in a democracy, in a republic, is extremely important. Because the authority and the power that she's been given comes at specifically people voting for her in an election. Now, it's messier. It's way messier than a bakery because of the fact that she is a elected government
and
official.
Everybody who cast their vote for her does not agree with her decision.
Not at all.
Well, and also too, as an elected official, the first thing you do is you swear an oath, don't you? You swear an oath.
Well, and that's the other thing, that she did have an oath. She did take the oath to do that, and then that's the whole question.
That's why it's a constitutional thing. Who's right? Is Justice Scalia and Thomas, and are they just? They don't count anymore. This is not a closed conversation. Just like Roe v. Wade will never be a closed conversation because we're talking about important, real, cultural changing activities. The destruction of the family by having a educational culture come in line that it says everything is equal and there's nothing special or important to preserve about a nuclear family. And if that's what we're going to say as a society, then we better get ready for the ramifications of that.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone's arguing that. As
Christians,
we're not arguing. Yeah, as Christians, we have to stand up for what we believe, just like homosexuals and people in same-sex marriages are fighting for what they believe. The question being, how is it that we can find a middle ground so that us as Christians, we're not losing our voice, we're not losing our
middle ground is achieved through two very, very strong sides pulling at each other until one cannot pull the other another way.
Or you both sides get really tired
Really,
of
really
losing
tired.
people and fighting and all the blood and everything, and we sit down and come up with a compromise.
Right. So the middle ground from I am on the extreme side of an ideology. I own it. I get it. I'm on the right side of this whole thing, because I want Christianity to continue to permeate the halls of government and the halls of legislature, and freely and with the ability to be heard and to not be silenced.
Well, I want
As
Christianity
hate speech
to
for crying out
permeate
loud.
into past the halls of
Okay, that
government and
sounds
into
great.
the homes of the American.
But if
I'm
you
kind of
don't
hoping it
speak up
doesn't, so
on
Jesus
this-
will come back. Because as long as all of these nations have revival and stuff, Jesus
Hey
ain't
man,
coming back.
there's conversations happening right now about my perspective, John's perspective on the preference for
Thank you, Wade.
only heterosexual marriage being okay as being a mental disease. It's hate speech for me to preach romance.
Yeah, there's all kind of crazy
Okay,
stuff.
so now,
Yeah, there's
no,
all
no,
kind
no,
of crazy
but crazy, and that being a part of the legal landscape that we find ourselves in is not that far away. There's not a whole lot of difference between,
Well, I would
already
argue if the four of us sitting at this table actually lived out the teachings of Jesus, everybody would think we're crazy, including most of the people who go to church.
That's good. Yeah. We look like John the Baptist,
We
right?
look like John the Baptist.
All right. Thanks for joining us, John. We appreciate it,
John.
man. So
Try to be passionate about something next time.
All right.
yeah, well, I think one of the questions I wanted to ask too was, did this lady have to check a religious box when she applied for the job? When she took that job. I mean, if I go to work somewhere, they can't ask me my religion because it's illegal. It's,
Right,
right. Why? Because they can't discriminate against me or for me based on my religion. And so it's, things have changed since this lady's been in office, and that aspect has changed.
That's true.
Well, and what's hard is, like you had said earlier, it's that whole ethics thing is how do we keep everything uniform, and right now it's not.
It's not, and that's why I say we got to make sure that we do our homework. When you just make a picket sign, or you just put a Facebook thing and say this is horrible and this is wrong, and she should be able to stand for what she believes, that's a really bold statement, because that means any elected official in any place should be able to stand what they believe for their religion, and I guarantee there's not anybody that wants that.
Right.
No,
Yeah, I mean, Wade on Periscope makes a point that Christians are certainly going against the flow of society.
And absolutely.
I mean,
We'll always go against the flow.
That's the history of Christianity in reality.
Yeah, and my argument will be that we go against the flow, and while government is beneficial and trying to influence people, I'm going to try to do that influence outside of the government.
Yes,
and now if the government gets in the way of me doing that, then I will stand up to that and say, look,
and American Christians, the Christians that have lived in America in the past 50 to 100 years have had it easier than any set of Christians in any time in the history of the world.
Agreed. Agreed.
And
I mean, there are
and
people
right now. The persecution is, I'm not going to perform a wedding, or I'm not going to give
Right.
a document for a wedding.
Yeah.
In Syria and other places right now, I'm not sure they would call that persecution. But that's where we are, and whatever your reality is, that is what your reality is. But the idea that so many cultural Christians have is that Christianity is this rainbow and lollipops and everything is great and God wants me to be happy. The whole pursuit of happiness is the United States thing, is not a biblical thing. And we're starting to see that.
Yeah, Wade's saying that in essence, Christians then shouldn't work for the government if it goes against their beliefs. I think the hard part about that
is the
that,
Anabaptist. And if I look at my history and I look at all the things that came out of the Reformation, and I've looked at a group of people that I'm going to go, I want to be on their team. I'm going to be on the Anabaptist team. That's because they believed in adult conversion. They believed in all kinds of things, and that was their stance.
Sure.
Their stance was, as Christians, you don't have anything to do with the government, because the government is its thing. And when you look at Jesus had nothing to do with the government. When they brought up Caesar, he was like, man, give to Caesar what's Caesar's. You know, and
Yeah.
from that standpoint, if somebody comes, if you're in this lady's position and they come and say, we want this document so we get married, you
Well,
could say,
yeah.
you know what, give to Caesar's what Caesar. Here's the stamp. Go do whatever you do. God's going to judge you, not me.
Going back to the argument that John was making earlier was that there's a danger in that, because if then all the Christians and government decide, well, we're not going to work for the government, then what does that do to the people that are in government?
Well, but I would also argue maybe that's how we got here.
I didn't say that's what we were supposed to do. I'm
Right.
just saying that's what they did, and that group of people did. Now, in a very real way, I have chosen to be Anabaptist.
Yeah.
I'm not political. I don't get into political stuff. I don't run for office. I don't go out and vote. I vote, but I don't go out and I don't do all that. So right. So in those ways, I do live an Anabaptist, the style that they lived.
Yeah.
From a personal standpoint of how I'm doing it. And that doesn't mean every Christian should stay out of it or whatever, because I don't. I think as Christians, we need to be in every aspect of life that we can.
Right.
Yeah, and I think what John was saying is we need Christian people and Christian officials in the government.
Of course we do.
But and this is what I'm arguing is that, you know, and when I say neutral, I mean, yes, they're in the government, but they can't necessarily, like this woman who's an elected official,
impose their
beliefs.
And that's where we started. This whole conversation,
exactly.
How many ever minutes ago, that's where we started. That is a dangerous thing because and I can stand and cheer if the person who's taking the stand has my belief system.
Yeah.
But if the person is taking a stand on a religious freedom and they don't have my and I don't agree with them, I'm not going to stand and cheer that.
See, you're right, and what she should have done is, like, I think we're kind of figuring this out already. She should have stepped down. She should have resigned, and then after that,
or find somebody. And I don't know. Maybe she's the only. Maybe she's the clerk, so her name is on it, so she has to stamp it. I don't know.
Sure.
But if nobody else could do it, and okay, now this is a part of my job. Let's say your personal conviction is that you shouldn't consume alcohol, you shouldn't serve that shouldn't be a deal, and you're working for a restaurant that is alcohol free. They do not have a liquor license. Mm-hmm. They're just selling chicken fingers. Okay,
right. Yep.
And then the restaurant decides that they can make some more money, and they want to put a bar in. Now they have a liquor license, and now they're going to ask you to serve alcohol to people.
Right.
Okay? You can't say, I'm going to refuse to do that to your boss and keep your job. At that point, you either have to say, let me figure out how I can do this. Can I just work in the kitchen?
Right.
Can I just bus tables? Can I just whatever?
Is there a way
or
around that?
I need to go find another job.
Yeah.
And
great point.
that's the way I see it.
Yeah, we
It's a great
talked
point.
about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a tough situation, sticky situation.
It is. Yeah, one of the viewers, we won't get into it too deeply, but one of the viewers had talked about the people in the military that serve that are doing things against their beliefs.
Yes.
And people come back really screwed up from that. There's implications in that as well. And there are
an awful lot of people who are Christians who believe that Christians shouldn't serve in the military.
Sure.
Enormous amount of people.
So,
that believe
and I think that as we wrap up here, it was a good discussion. I think a lot of formulation of ideas and things like that. We had a great following here on Periscope. We appreciate you guys being with us. We're trying to do this once a week, getting together and just discussing current events and things that are happening. So we appreciate you guys being with us. We appreciate Omar, John, and Marty being here. And we're going to sign off for now. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks, guys.